So the Librarians, what's season 4? It's not good.
The Librarians. Only the library would have this.
No, it's
I love it.
it actually came in from what do you call it? Cardston, I think.
Oh, from Cardston, eh?
Yep, Cardston.
Yeah. Well, usually when we get stuff from far afield, it's better than the stuff we get here. What happened in this case?
Anyway, we're just drinking bell pepper juice. I'm trying to keep from coming down
With my
James's cold, but so I'm drinking a lot of hot lemon and honey.
It's working so far. It's been working since Saturday morning.
Well, I'm exhausted.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
I feel very tired, and I have a little bit of a sniffle, but I haven't had more than that so far. So
you've held it off for 4 days. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
honey and mustard. No, I'm just kidding. Honey and lemon juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lots of ginger.
Well, I did have ginger this morning already too.
No, that'll kill what ails you. If it doesn't kill you.
And you have a shot of ginger, and then
I
your
could see
bell
it.
pepper.
It looked absolutely medicinal and/or poisonous. So
yeah, that's how I had it this morning too, and boy, that burns. But you got to get that chaser ready right away.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have a shot of ginger.
Okay. Hopefully, I don't bring it back up.
But yeah, the Librarians. I don't know. It's probably that. I mean, the acting is not very good. It's very TV quality acting.
That's worse than actually having librarians play the role, I suppose.
Yeah, but anyway, what was I going to say about it? It's kind of like, I think it's probably Magic School Bus kind of age. So, like, I think that's the crowd that would like this. So maybe that's my problem, is it's just not really made for adults to be watching.
Man, that's awful.
Yep.
I had an appetite before I came out here.
Yeah.
It flew away. Ooh.
James is just having his leftovers from yesterday.
Well, except for the corn.
Well, I added new corn.
Yep. I better eat that. Oh man, that cold is going to go fleeing off to the next person that comes next to you.
Me. It's going to go to me.
See? It's going to be so scared of that ginger.
I don't know how I haven't been that yet, because I mean, I'm within proximity to you a lot. Anyway, did you want to talk about the Barbarians, Empires of the
Steps?
Yeah.
Yeah, you keep on talking about stereotyping barbarians. They're like nomads. So, Mongols and stuff like that. What do you think of Mongols? Like, what have you heard about them?
Well,
good guys, right?
Traditionally?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Barbarian hordes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Not super nice people. Pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Serious into the raping and pillaging crowd. So, I don't know.
And plundering and vandalizing. What were you going to say? When they saw a library.
Massacring.
Yeah.
So yeah, not nice people.
No.
So, I don't know. If you want to call people who rape, plunder, murder, and really revel in it. Barbarian, I think that's, why not call them rapists, murderer,
There we go.
and
Barbarian just means they speak with an accent.
yeah. So I mean, stop calling them barbarians. Really going light on the. I think that's being a little nice,
Way too
honestly, because yeah, call a violent person what they are. If they're
Yeah.
aggressive, brutal people, call them that then. So, and if you want to just associate barbarian with that, okay. But yeah, I don't think, like, he was in the show, he kept referring to Genghis Khan as a genius, and it's like,
Hitler
genius?
was a genius. Like Genghis Khan was a genius who got away with his war crime, his crimes against humanity. So
I don't think that makes a genius.
no, it doesn't.
No.
Stalin got away with his crimes, so he wasn't a genius. He was stupid. He thought he was bright because he knew Georgian and Russian, and went and learned Esperanto. Well, if you know any European language, you basically got your Esperanto. So he probably knew a few others, but that doesn't make a genius. What he did was he manipulated people and was very cruel to them and got away with it.
Still, I have to say that I listened to quite a lot of the show while I was laying down or cooking or whatever, and it certainly is, that great course is worth watching.
I watched all of it I could. The last disc was flipped out, so
Yeah, the
I
last
only have
disc
trouble
of
with his
maybe
interpretations.
About lecture 34 or whatever, I think that one went.
Yeah, it's like one of those documentaries that I say, it works against its message. All the detail that he's chucking in there is going, these guys were awful. These guys were awful. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. Like Mongols. No, they're people of color or something like that. We got a picture of Genghis Khan, contemporary it looks like, and he looked very Oriental. But the folks that devised it were Indo-Europeans. Did you know that? The whole system.
What are you talking about?
He devised the system of nomadic pastoralism on horseback, or using horses initially for chariots, carts. Indo-Europeans. So, and they conquered the world. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are. If you practice that lifestyle, you're nasty. So, where it comes from is you're parasiting off of animals, lazy, and you get used to. You've got this huge advantage that horses give you. You've got mobility. It's like having a kind of a tank. It's not armored, but you got this huge mobility. It's more like having personnel transport and stuff like that. Oh, the poor infantry people that are up against you, well, they're in trouble. So
well, it's actually better than a vehicle if you think about it. Like, there's some disadvantages, but if your vehicle runs out, say you have a tank and you run out of fuel, well, you're not going anywhere.
Exactly right.
But
so it's not just horses, but camels. Go ahead.
But every once in a while, your horse stops to eat and recharges, and off you go again. So
yeah, he made that point about camels, right?
Oh, okay.
But it applies to horses. So long as you got grazing, you're good to go, or bad to go. In the case of almost all these cases, I don't know any of these folks that come along and said, hey, we want to missionarize for Buddhism or something like that. Now, eventually they got Buddhism, the Mongols did. And you notice they're not going around plundering everyone and stuff like that.
Nowadays,
no. And it's partly because they got Buddhism. It's partly just because, like I used to think guns were a curse. But I'm telling you, like, people were dying. They'd go and slaughter a whole city. What were they saying? One dude, Tamerlane, killed his fellow Muslims and maybe 800,000 people in Baghdad when he sacked it. Well, 800,000 people, just because it was in the past, doesn't make it any less. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's ridiculous. You know, the Japanese were horrible monsters when they went in and took out Shanghai, maybe 100,000 people. Nanking, 100,000 people. But I think some people say Singapore, 100,000 people. But you add all those three up, even 100,000 apiece, it's not 800,000. So this is stunning. You know, like gunpowder, what it did was it stopped these idiots, not quite in their tracks. It took a little while for them to realize it. Hey, it's not working out, because they weren't really that bright. And you know what they did when they hit a monastery, it doesn't matter if it's Buddhist or if it's Christian. When they hit a library, it's just, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna have a nice time reading. No. They'd be having a wiener roast before they had wieners. So yeah. So yeah, this talk, this politically correct talk, it's lost on me. You know, I'm a left winger, but I just I'm tired of it, the stupidity, right? That lifestyle, nomadic, pastoral, herding lifestyle is. He didn't raise one example of people that were at all nice, and like I say, it went the spectrum from white to Oriental. You know, like Occidental to Oriental. Started off with the Occidental people, you know, like what they did was they spread into China, Western China. Well, it's not China. They were pushing on the Chinese. These are people with reddish hair and bluish eyes and fair skin and stuff like that. They found some of their mummies off in Western China and stuff like that. They were pushing people all over the place, and they ended up taking over places like Ireland, Italy, and Spain, and all sorts of things. And they weren't nice, you know. Some of my ancestors were that. Many of my ancestors were. And a person's got to live up to it, you know. You know, I had a lot of nasty, plundering, rapist type ancestors. That's the way it goes. You got to own up to it. Right? It doesn't matter what color you are, whatever. And it's just a nasty lifestyle. Nasty. So I'm not going to single out any particular group. I talked about the Mongols, but I'm focusing mainly on the people who developed it initially. White folks, some of them Eastern, like Scythians and stuff like that. But I think the first wave heading off west were, you know, the predecessors of the Irish and the Italians and Greeks and the Germans and stuff like that. Yeah. Nasty. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's. I just wish that you know, like what it's like when you're seeing something like this is. I try to read stuff in Russian, you know, and I try to get hold of stuff that was printed in the Soviet stuff, Soviet times, and I'll go. You know, I'm studying the Urartian verb system, and you got to get ready at the beginning for a communist boilerplate. Somehow or another, you're dealing with verbs, and they'll get some sort of communist interpretation at the beginning. You see, that's how it was with him here, you know. Not communist, but it's politically correct and stuff like that. So, yeah, you know, they've got to get that out of the way to show that, yeah, I'm a good person and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's just, you know, like, cut that stuff out and get down to the real stuff, you know? Anyway, it comes highly recommended, actually. But, you know, read a lot and widely and read well, and you'll have an antidote to the silliness that precedes it and occurs. You know, like, I don't know, sometimes, you know, like, I study the ancient Assyrians, and they were really nasty brutes. I can't, when I'm talking about them, I can't mention the kind of stuff they did, because Pauline's queasy about these sorts of things. I used to be queasy about reading it. And then I'm going, finally, it's like working in a morgue or something like that. You just kind of get used to it, you know. But they were nasty brutes. And I'll go and I'll look at Sargon the Second, and I'm going, man, that guy must have been on the ball. But I don't think I'd call him a genius. What he was doing was ethnic. His first year, he came down and finished off the ethnic cleansing. His first full year, finished off the ethnic cleansing of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. You know, he helped. He and what they figure is his brother, his predecessor, Shalmaneser V. Shalmaneser V conquered Samaria and started moving them out, and he died. And so Sargon came down and kind of like finished the job. And so I'm looking at how he's operating and stuff like that, and I'm saying, yeah, you know, but he was a nasty, nasty brute. I look at his dad, what looks like his dad, Tiglath-Pileser III, and he was amazing. You know, like people talk about the Neo-Assyrian Empire, but the guy who really got it going, I don't know how he did it, because it was having trouble for a couple of generations before he took over. Yeah, that'd be pretty accurate. Maybe even a little bit more. You know, it almost went down in flames. And he didn't revive it. He went further. The furthest any of his predecessors went was the present-day Gaza Strip. That was Adad Nurari. And I actually think it was Adad Nurari when he was probably had a regent. So it was actually his mom. Can you imagine that? The greatest Assyrian conqueror up till the time of Tiglath-Pileser was Semiramis, or however you pronounce her name. Semiramis. That's the Greek rendering of her name, I think. And they went all the way from northern Iraq to Gaza Strip, the edge of Egypt. But then, when Tiglath-Pileser took over, I think he took over 45 or something like that. And in 13 years, all of a sudden, he's saying, I conquered Egypt to its farthest border. And the previous person to have done that was an Akkadian king called Naram. They call it Sin, and I think they should probably call him Naram Zu. But yeah, so when was he? Well, they date him to roughly 2200 BC, and Tiglath-Pileser's like conquering Egypt 734 BC. So that's a long, long time.
Okay, so you're back to the normal James talk, because everything ends up with Shalmaneser.
Does?
It does, yes. Everything. It could be any topic, and somehow it ends up back with...
Well, there were a lot of Shalmanesers. There were 5.
Okay, but yeah, well, that's fine. But I'm saying probably, you know, here we were talking about the barbarians of the steppes, and...
Well, it's not that far away from it. They figure the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the dudes who ruled over were Arameans from the northern Arabian Peninsula. They were nomads, right? So.
Well, there's other things to say about that Barbarian series, though.
Okay, what would you say?
Well, you were mentioning about China, various rulers paying tribute.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, like, oh, these poor, I think we've got this idea, you know, that these nomadic people say, oh, the Mongols, they're so poor now. Yeah, that's just only recently since gunpowder, you know, like slavery enslaves the slaver. It enslaves other people, but it also enslaves the slaver. When the slave trade is cut off, and particularly when slaving, not just slaving, but slavery is disallowed, you have people with this tradition of, someone else can do the work, you know, like my horses, you know, like they help me herd my herds, and they'll go out there and do the combining for me, you know, and you know, I'll live off them and stuff like that. So, yeah, what they were doing was they were just getting the Chinese to pay tribute, and the Chinese were going, yeah, you know, like, we got our peasants working hard and this sort of stuff, and you know, it's kind of hard to be a peasant, and they're working away, and what happens is these bozos come in from Mongolia or wherever, you know, it's the Chinese had trouble. It's amazing to read the annals, you know, and it's year after year, name after name, you know. The Mongols are just, they weren't the last. Of course, you got the Manchu were the last, and when were they deposed? 1911. 1912. Well, holy smokes. That's my dad's still alive, and that's like 11 and 12 years before he was born. And the Manchu had been squatting on China. Understand, the Chinese paid tribute. That wasn't enough for these bosses. They came in, and they were in control in China. It wasn't like just for a couple of years or a couple of decades. It's more than a couple of 100 years. So I think it was like 1644 to 1911. And what did they ever do? You know, what they did was they forced the Chinese to wear the pigtails. You've seen the pigtails. So they'd stand out, you know, like racism ain't new, you know. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're ethnic Chinese, you got to wear the pigtail, so you're not, you can't be confused with a Manchu. Racism ain't new, and it's not exclusive to white folks. So, yeah. But yeah, that was, I hadn't realized it was quite that bad. I knew things like that had happened in Egypt, for example, when the Scythians, they were white folks on horses, came storming down out of probably just north of the Caucasus Mountains. They came from southern Russia, southwest Russia. Some people would say maybe the Ukraine. And they came storming down somewhere around 625 BC or something like that. The only thing that stopped them from going into Egypt is the Pharaoh basically, I don't think he met them at the border, but he sent some emissaries at the border and said, here's a lot of money. What does it take to get you guys to go someplace else?
Was it Shalmaneser?
No, Shalmaneser came from present-day Iraq, not Egypt, so, or all five of them. But his name was, I don't know how to pronounce it really well, Psammetichus or something like that. And the number.
But it is interesting we got back to Egypt.
Well, Egypt's different from Iraq.
Okay.
And what I was talking about was the Scythians. And again, this is a part of the thing. It's, if I specialize.
Because I know you specialize in, I know, and I think it's cute. But did he talk about that at all in the Barbarian thing? Because I didn't hear it in the Barbarian
No, he
lectures.
didn't. He actually left it out, so far as I know. Maybe it's in there. He should have mentioned it.
Yeah, we couldn't get through the last lecture.
No.
So
the Scythians
but
are
that would
early.
have been, yeah, you would think he would have covered that early on. And
yeah,
I don't
he might have. I
remember
might have slept through it, right? You know, like
Well, I don't remember hearing him.
sometimes I drowse off, but no reflection on him. It's just a chemo that I take. But he should have mentioned it. He probably did. So
Yeah.
if he left it out, it would have been an omission on his part. The Scythians, he did talk about the Scythians. He talked about them a lot.
You're right. I think I did hear that.
Well, you would have heard it a lot in the background.
Yeah.
What he was kept on saying is they're the guys who actually started the whole thing on horseback. I understand Indo-Europeans were doing things like with chariots and things like that before them. So we've got a picture of about the Assyrians on horseback. It'd be about 850 BC, and I don't know if the artist got it wrong. They figure the artist got it right. The horses weren't strong enough that the Assyrians had at that point in time for them to carry on their back. They were sitting on their hunches.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the Assyrians drew
So they
lots
bred
of
them bigger. Horses have been bred bigger.
Yeah.
How long do Clydesdales live compared to other horses, I wonder?
have no
They're
idea.
huge.
They are huge. So usually when you look at animals, like pets, the
Yeah,
smaller ones
'cause
last longer.
Exactly. Great Danes don't have a huge, long life
No.
expectancy. I wonder if it's the same with the horses.
So
Anyway.
I think there was a lot of, I think camel stuff was important for a lot of people, and it just wasn't documented. So the people would have been messing around with horses one way or another. The horses made it into the Near East. That's like Egypt and Assyria. With chariots, right? Those were devised presumably by nomads. I actually don't think they were. Did you notice how he was saying the Mongols would bring Chinese engineers all the way into Europe to do their siege stuff? You see, what happens is if they get powerful enough in terms of fear and also fear and also incentives, money or whatever, they can buy whatever or force whatever technology that they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think they developed a chariot. I think they just got the chariot was developed in so-called civilized places. Well, civilized places just means cities or towns or villages. They were developed there, and then it was adopted and adapted by the horse nomads before they started riding horses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we've got some amazing pictures of horses drawing something like carts or little onagers, little horses. They always say it's onagers or it's mules, and I'm going, come on. It's ancient Sumerians. And they've got the dating of this stuff wrong, but yeah, it's amazing. You get people saying, oh, the Pharaoh in Exodus, he wouldn't have had a chariot then. Well, chariot is chariot is chariot. Words change, you know what I'm saying? Like a car used to be a cart.
Mm-hmm.
Before cars were developed. You just names sometimes go from one thing to another. But I can guarantee you that in the Middle East, there were something like horse or equine drawn carts around the time of the Exodus. For Pete's sake. Yeah. And that's on a sensible dating of Exodus. Not roughly 1200 BC, but 1850 BC. Around there. That's real time, not Egyptological time. Sorry, I thought you wanted me to talk about things.
I do. I'm very interested.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that now you've opened up to being, to speaking as your normal self on the camera.
Something
I think
like
it's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
All roads lead back to Egypt.
Not really. The stuff that interests me the most is Mesopotamia. I could talk the most about that.
Okay.
But I can talk about the Hittites. I can talk about whatever. The Hittites are Indo-European.
Yeah.
It's just we don't have as much history. The thing about the Assyrians is we've got a lot of history. Some of it is like we've got the first camel recorded. Gindabu the Arab, or Aribi I think so. It's in the Assyrian inscriptions. That's roughly 850 BC, and he's up on he's escaping from the Assyrians. And the camel they did a pretty good job with the camel. It's running along, just getting away out of the way of the Assyrians. Hilarious.